Hello and welcome to sim.bc, where it currently is 14:05, so just 5, and now it's actually 6 past 2 in the afternoon. And let me just get this so I have it on me, because I'm going to go through what I've been teasing, so to say, the last couple of days, and that is the scoring of Thomas-kilmann conflict mode questionnaire if you want to check it out. And since I mentioned the name, you can go online and probably find this questionnaire. We were provided with it during our latest or 2 sessions ago's negotiation session, and I did it. And it's a questionnaire consistent of, I think it's 30. Yes, it is 30 questions where you can answer either A or B on the different questions, and you'll be giving the choice of, yeah, as I said, choosing A or B, and A or B then represents either competing, collaborating, compromising, avoiding, or accommodating choices. So you perhaps will have a choice between a what should we say, a question or an A answer that is very competing and very forcing against a sharing, and then you can get that same competing choice against an avoiding choice later on, so that you can see that in relation to competing and collaborating, which one are you most, in comparison to competing and compromising, which one are you the most, and so on and so forth. So you pick all of them, you put them all against each other, and as I said, there are 5 different ones to get. Now, what I thought was quite interesting is that I got competing and forcing on every single option where it was possible. Now, what does this mean? Well, this means that I'm rather competitive, actually, according to this analysis. However, I do not think that I'm that competitive, but that could be because I am, what you would say, I'm aware of that this is a thing, and therefore I'm trying to work against it, so that I'm trying to, work on my shortcomings, so on and so forth, as I have said in the previous one. Just if you're interested, I got 12 on forcing, 7 on problem solving, 6 on sharing, 2 on withdrawal, and 3 on smoothing, which is the competing, collaborating, compromising, avoiding, and accommodating, respectively. So without any further ado, mates, we have to go through this quite fast, I'm afraid, because we have 2 or 3 slides left on my PowerPoint structure here, and I want to get through today so that we can actually move on and discuss something new the next time, because and review it, because I'm all up and down here, and I feel like I've covered these topics a lot now, and I think that I tend to go back on the same things that I've discussed previously, which isn't beneficial for anyone, unfortunately, unless, like, if you follow every episode. But yeah, so today we're going to discuss the last part, which is the framework for international negotiation, which is the Weiss Stripp approach, which is basic concept of negotiation process. Negotiators select criteria, significance of type of issue, concerns with protocol, and complexity of language. Just things that you have to keep in mind when you are, approaching a negotiation with different cultures. And that, yet again, this is something that we have discussed previously, so I'm just going to go through it yet again, and then we're going to move on to the next slide. So, basic concept of negotiation process. It is either strategic versus synergistic, or another way of saying it is position versus interest. Sorry, I'm all up and rolling here. But let's get our culture on. So, I think it's easier to say position versus interest. So that's all the way of saying, what are our interests in this negotiation? Do we need to provoke our interest? Do we need to show our interest? Or is it more important that we keep our position? Do we need to show a unified front, or do we need to sell here? What is our objectives versus what is the position that we have chosen? Does the interest that we have, do they align perfectly with the position that we have in the group? Or do we need to fix our position in the group first before we can actually deliver our interest, or deliver on our interest? That is things you have to keep in mind. The basic concept on the negotiation process. The next one is negotiators select criteria. And this is, as I said yesterday, do you send a team? Do you send one man, one woman, one person? Do you send someone who's new at the company? Do you send someone who's old? And you have all these criteria to choose from: experience, seniority, gender, ethnicity, technology, like tech knowledge rather? Do they know about what they're selling? Do they not know about it? Is it beneficial if they do? Is it beneficial if they don't? Are they, well, technically seniority, or are they not? Are they just of a higher rank, or have they been at the company for the most time, for a longer time? All of these things you have to take into consideration. Also, if you send a team, they need to know about what they are in relation to each other, because there could be someone who is have a very deep tech knowledge, while there is another person who's the project leader. However, the person with the tech knowledge has been with the company for a longer time, potentially making that person the popular leader in the group, whilst the project manager is the formal leader. So the project manager needs to have the popular leader on board, so that they will present a unified front when coming to a negotiation. Otherwise, it will be very hard if they try to push two different interests and taking two different positions in the negotiation, which will make you look kind of weird in comparison to your competitors, maybe. Significance of type of issues. Is it a substantive issue? Is it a relatable issue? Is it something that needs to be dealt with today? Is it something that can be dealt with in the future? Do you have to get the sale now? Can you actually reschedule this appointment? Can you reschedule the meeting if something doesn't work out? Do you have the seniority and the clearance to actually make the sale today, or do you need to aim to reschedule an appointment with the people in charge who actually are the ones with seniority enough to actually make the sale? The next one is concerned with protocol, formal or informal protocol. How are you dressed? How is your language? We've discussed this before. Dress according to your audience and adapt your language so that people understand you, but so they don't think that you're, fancy pantsy all the way. You're up here and they're down here, and at the same time you don't want to be way under them. You want to be on their levels. This is all have to do with prep time in the sales cycle and the introduction, when you actually confirm that your preparation has been correct. So do you dress smart casual? Do you dress formally? Do you dress just in a t-shirt or whatever, whatnot? Where are you going to be? Very important to take into consideration in which locale you're going to be, which country is it, because formality may look different in different cultures and in different nations. So take into consideration formal and informal protocol and what they actually mean. So that they don't say, well, come informal, and you show up in a t-shirt, and what they meant was smart casual. So take into consideration, what do they actually mean with this? Where do they come from? What is actually informal in that context, or what is formal in their context? How do they think? And then last one is complexity of language, which is yet again going back to high context, low context culture, but we have discussed that yesterday, so you can go and watch that if you think that is important. If you think that's important, of course it is important, but if you're very interested in it, I covered it for the 2 last days. And then continuation of the framework of international negotiations is also the nature of persuasion. Do you need to use logic, or do you need to use emotions? Because some people, they're just looking to make a personal connection with someone, whilst other, they tend to be swayed by facts. This is also something that can be potentially covered in a future video, because I know it is in another PowerPoint coming in after this one. So yet again, just stating that either logic or emotion, or a combination of both, but some people tend to be swayed more against the other. Are they more empathy based, or are they more logical based? That also have to do with masculinity, femininity. If you look at Hofstede's different cultural dimensions, I would argue in the macho culture you might be more inclined to see logic and achievements, while in the femininity side of you, in the process, you're more empathy based. So that is also important to know. What are the competitors going to be most, what you would say, responsive towards? What do they look for in a negotiation within itself? Role of individual aspirations. Is the negotiator negotiating for themselves or the company? And if they are negotiating for themselves, is this clear? If they are negotiating for the company, is that clear? Will the person will the other party clearly understand where you're coming from and what you're saying? If you shift halfway through the organization or halfway through the negotiation, will the people listening to you actually follow that you have changed your interpretation of what you're actually negotiating for? Are you negotiating for something that will benefit you, or are you negotiating for something that will potentially hurt yourself as an individual but help the overall profit of the company or profitability of the company? And If so, is this something that, yet again, the other party is aware of, because they will base their knowledge on what you are saying, and they will think about what are you thinking about, and hence they will, yeah, you know what I mean. They will think how you think, and based on how they think that you think, they will thinking another way. They will interpret it in another way. That's complex, hard, and not the best way of stating it. I'm sorry. Now, moving on to the next one then, base of trust on written law or friendship. Because in different parts of the world, yet again, the Western versus the East, in my opinion, in my what you would say, as I've been taught, in China, they are more, for instance, lean towards friendship when it comes to trust. That if you are very good friends with someone, you can easily lend them money. Whilst in the Western society, and at least in Sweden, even if I'm very good friends with someone, I wouldn't lend them money, because I know it's such a big contempt of issue. Like, it could be such a big issue, so I would rather have a signed, written law, so they have the minimum requirement of actually giving back the money. Otherwise, it will hurt more than our friendship. They will actually go against the law. So that is also based on trust. Where is the trust coming from, and why, and how? What you would say? How many repercussions are there of not following this trust, of actually breaking the trust? Risk-taking propensity, risk-averse or non-risk averse. Are the people going to risk all, lose all, or are they more inclined to be on average? And it's very important for you that you know where you are, and maybe that you don't show that to the other party, because that will give them a competitive advantage over you, because they will have an advantage in the negotiation, because they know that you're either all or nothing, or that you're in the middle, and they can utilize that against you. But you, on the other hand, want to know what the other party is. Are they very everything or nothing? Because then you can show your proposal, or you can tailor your proposal in the negotiation towards that. So when you sell, you can sell them a lot instead of in between, because they might not go for that. And of course, the other way around, if they're more, what you would say, risk averse, they might say, oh, we take something that's 50-50. If it works good. If it doesn't hurt us that bad. You know what I mean? And then you have to tailor your offering around that. Value of time, monochronic or polychronic. So that yet again goes towards the sequential manner of going through things, or the taking one thing at a time from different parts of the schedule. Went through that yesterday and the day before that, and probably the day before that as well. So if you're interested in that, you can go back and watch those videos. And then decision-making system. Is it authoritative or consensual? So what do I mean with that? Well, is the sale going to be based on what the project manager says, or about what the entire team says? Are they going to vote? How are they going to take the decision? For instance, let's say I have a mate who is working in a Chinese company, and he says that often not when they are, or not in a Chinese company, in a Swedish company that's based in China, and when a lot of the Chinese employees come to Sweden and they have to take a decision and talk in a group, they usually, or in a, as a team, the Chinese people usually go out of the room, they want to discuss it among themselves, and then go back with a unified front. So they're more consensual in the way that they're taking a decision. Whilst this person's, what should we say, where they work, may work in this cultural context, or this corporate culture that they have, they tend to be more monochronic, so that authority is proposed over consensus, so that if the boss says we're going to do this, it doesn't matter what the other people do, and that tends to piss off the Chinese employees. So it's very important to also know, even within just a corporation, when you talk and when you make decisions, are these decisions going to hurt parts of the team, or are they not going to benefit everybody? And is everybody having the same understanding of what type of decision-making system that is in place and that we have? Now, I know that I went through all that quite quickly, and I am sorry, but I just want to get this over with, because if I don't, that sounded so wrong. I don't want to get this over with, but if I do not, it will be like a half-ass based video tomorrow that doesn't have that much information in it, and we don't want that now, will we? So how cultural influence negotiations? There is a short little thing I'm going to put on the screen now that you can pause for if you want to, and now it's gone. Now we're moving on, because that's just a, what you would say, a framework, not a framework, a table with all the different negotiation factors and the range of cultural responses. So, cross-cultural negotiations, a few final things to consider, and I'm just going to read it straight off. Negotiating is a social process that is embedded in a much larger context of culture. Yes, we know that. This context increases in complexity when more than one culture or country is involved. We know that as well. The prep time in relation to the dominant culture, and have the other minority or subcultures done the same preparation as you have. Don't underestimate the variation within any culture, because all the individuals, even though they're promoted towards a culture, they don't, rather they're not forced to act in alignment with this culture. They can be their own individual person. Not everybody's the same. Consider effect of culture on negotiator ethics and tactics. You have to know what kind of tactics they're going to use for you to get a competitive advantage. Consider the effects of culture when it comes to choosing tactics for the other party and for your own sake as well. There is no perfect approach to cross-cultural negotiations. You have to select your own tools of analysis. And this yet again goes back to look at the individual instead of the pragmatic view. That is what generally enforced here, because you need to analyze it on yourself. There is no one best way, because if it were, well, people would change it. Now, but there is no one best way. Why? Because you're working with people. When you're working with people, people have different opinions. When you're negotiating, people have different interpretations of what is a good deal and what's a bad deal. Why not, and everything in between in the gray area. So that is why there is no best alternative. So you should base your negotiations on your own experiences and your own analysis and your own ways of analyze the negotiation. However, I would strongly argue that it is positive if you know some of the no-goes before you go into the culture. So that was everything for me today, mate. This was a lot, and I'm sorry if I went through it fast yet again, but this is just the nature of how I had to do it today. So have a nice one, mates. I'll see you tomorrow with a bit of a review on this entire cultural approach. I really liked it, and I hope you did too. So have a nice one, mates. See ya.